Hi, everybody. Today's Wednesday, July 9th, 2025, and our friend Laith Marouf from Beirut is back with us. Welcome back, Laith.
Good to be with you, Nima.
Laith, let's get started with the BRICS summit. And they were talking about the situation in Gaza. They want to put an end to the conflict, to what's going on between Israel and Palestinians, between Israelis and Palestinians. How do you find the way that BRICS try to somehow deal with the issue and talk about the issue?
Yeah, I mean, it was surprising given that India is part of BRICS and it has a veto power over the statements coming out of BRICS. So to see India sign on to the statement calling for a ceasefire and end of hostilities is a welcome thing. It means that China and Russia, Brazil, South Africa were able to convince India to take such a stance. And we know that India has been supplying weapons and even mercenaries to the Zionist colony to conduct its warfare against the Palestinians. So that's a huge step, and most probably the um, Russian oil and gas exports through India and the amount of money that that's bringing to the Indian economy had a lot to do with the willingness of India to take a stance. Because no matter how much money India is making out of selling weapons to the Zionists, it's a fraction of how much money it's making selling Russian gas and oil as if it's Indian. So that's the power of economic integration of BRICS. And I think the more there is integration of BRICS economic systems, the less possibility we will see in different positions on foreign affairs, as we have seen for a while with India. But now, with the Indian economy benefiting so much from BRICS business, more so than it's benefiting from Western business, it's making a difference, I think, in how the decision makers are taking their decisions in India, and that's a healthy thing.
What was amazing to me that they called for unconditional Gaza ceasefire. And as you mentioned, being India part of, considering India being part of the BRICS and one of the main members of the BRICS countries, and it seems that Brazil has pushed for it so hard and they wanted to do something with the Gaza, with the situation in Gaza. But after all, Laith, when we talk about Gaza, it's not just about Gaza and Palestinians. We talk about the region, how they're trying to manipulate the region, Lebanon, Syria. Actually, in this summit, they were talking about Syria as well. And they don't see, they don't rely on what's going on with considering the new government in Syria. What's when it comes to Syria and the leverage that the United States somehow together with the United States, and also unfortunately Turkey is trying to do everything in their favor. Do you think that the situation in Syria would somehow um, go under changes, go under some sort of shifts, some sort of changes that would, I would say, basically change the government in Syria by these movements in Syria? Is there anything of that sort to be considered?
Yeah, I mean, it is clear to any Syrian that this government of the Julani and the HTS, Wahhabi Death Squad coalition that's governing Damascus is unsustainable, and it cannot last for long. And I think the biggest weakness of this HTS government is the arrogance that it and its backers in Turkey, the Emirates, the Zionist colony in the US have set into. The fast fall of Damascus have filled the heads of all of these capitals and their HTS tools with, imagination of grandeur, of being able to take over all of the region. And, we saw over the last week, for instance, the Americans and the Zionists saying that there's going to be a deal with HTS where HTS gets to occupy all the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon and take over the second largest city in the country, Tripoli, Trablus in the north, and that the Zionists will take the Golan Heights in return. Those are all, things that are very hard to achieve, and at the same time, for more than 100 years now, the people in the region, in the Fertile Crescent, have been requesting unification and fighting for it, whether through the Syrian Social National Party and or the Nasserite Arab Nationalist or whatever it is. And the West has been telling them, no, you can't, that these states are permanent, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, that you're not allowed to merge them. But we're now seeing the Israelis push for the reunification of Lebanon and Syria. Can you imagine that? And so this is, number one, it's the HTS attempting to invade Lebanon and conquering it. It's an impossibility. Number one. Number two, mentioning these things right now, including by the Trump envoy Barak, while he was in Amman, the capital of Jordan, a few days ago, he said Sykes-Picot was, unjust, and we should have allowed the people to unify in the region. So this in itself actually revitalizes the SSNP, so Syrian Social Nationalist Party. It revitalizes all the movement for unification, and that movement is not a Wahhabi movement. It's an anti-imperialist, secular movement. So the more the West tries to push for these fantasies, the weaker actually it gets on the ground here. Also these fantasies and that they're putting forward contradict with the aims of some of their other tools, like Turkey. Turkey wants to have to revive the Ottoman Empire and bring the Arabs back under its control. The Emirates wants to lead and control Syria. So how does these interests will clash together once the project is attempted by the Israelis? So when we look at what's happening in Syria, we can clearly see that nobody has the interest in keeping the government as it is now. And that means the more risk the West takes with this government, the weaker it is and the closer it is to its collapse.
Laith, the situation between Syria and Lebanon, it seems that the West is interested in somehow continuing this sort of involvement, conflict between the two, because they want to get something from the southern Syria than for Israel. But is the government in Lebanon trying to do something? They're close to France, to the United States. Somehow they're communicating with them. What are they trying to do? And we know, I want to talk about the situation with Hezbollah as well, because we know as time goes by, they're trying to do everything, I would say, to disarm Hezbollah. And how do you see the situation in Lebanon and the way the government is trying to somehow be closer to the West, to the United States?
Yeah, so there's a huge contradiction in how the government is working. On the one hand, they're claiming they want to have a unified Lebanon and that everything should fall under the government's control, including the weapons in the country. On the other hand, and this is coming from pressure from the United States and the Zionists, including this envoy of Trump, Barack, who was in the presidential palace 2 days ago, and from the pulpit in the presidential palace, said that there is now a new Middle East. The train is leaving. Syria is on that train, and Lebanon is going to be left behind and will be, kind of isolated if it doesn't follow suit. And then there was, at the same time, those threats about HTS invasion and takeover of the Beqa Valley and Tarablos, Tripoli. So these things are contradicting. On the one hand, the Lebanese government wants to disarm Hezbollah. On the other, there is a horde of Wahhabi head choppers that are at the border that are threatening to take majority of Lebanon back to Syria and to ethnically cleanse the regions that they will occupy. So how do these two things work together? And it's clear then for anyone that has any working brain cells that the Lebanese government doesn't care about the Lebanese state, doesn't care about the safety of the Lebanese citizens or the territorial integrity of Lebanon, and are willing to disarm the whole populace and to allow them to become victims of mass rape and mass killings, as is happening in Syria for the Alawites, Shia, Druze, and Christians. So these two things, because the U.S. and the Zionists are so vicious and also so high on their own drugs after the conquering of Damascus, that they are putting out propaganda that contradicts each other in terms of their effects, saying, hey, disarm Hezbollah and we'll lift the siege and the economy will be great and you'll join the new Middle East. And at the same time, hey, we have these death squads on your border that are going to take half of your country. If you're directing those two propaganda on the same populace, how are you going to convince that populace to disarm Hezbollah? So this is one of the main failures right now with the propaganda of the West directed to the population in Lebanon, and it's having a counter effect. Anyone that was Shia but is not associated with Hezbollah or didn't support armed resistance is now arming themselves, buying anything they can off the black market to put it in their house, in their living room, in case somebody comes and attacks them. Anyone that was, Christian and unaffiliated with the phalange parties, the imperialist Christian, supremacist parties, is now joining the parties that support resistance that are Christian or have huge Christian populations, like the SSNP and others. And so the similar for the Druze population. So this is not this is working against what the West wants. Their own propaganda, contradicting propaganda, is causing this. And of course, there's no way Hezbollah will disarm voluntarily, and there's nobody that can disarm them in Lebanon.
Laith, do you find that the situation in Lebanon in the aftermath of those attacks, how do you see Hezbollah today comparing to what it was before the assassination, before what has happened? Do you think that they're gaining their somehow their power, they're getting back to this scene, they're getting prepared for whatever would happen in the near future, or maybe today, tomorrow? We know that nothing is stable in that region. How do you see Hezbollah today after those, I would say, huge blows that has happened to Hezbollah. But your take on that?
You know, yesterday there was a interview with the new Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim al-Qasim, on aired on Al Mayadeen television. It's his first interview with any TV station, and he was very frank, and I think it kind of almost shocked people how open he was in his answers in regards to the failures during the war and what has happened since. And, you know, in terms of the assassinations of the frontline cadre, including Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, he answered about this. There was no breach in terms of infiltration in the organization. But as I said personally on many interviews before, the problem that Hezbollah faced is that it was turning into a governmental structure. You know, it's a party that was in office. And during its battle in Syria, had to reorganize itself from being just a militia to a semi-army. Okay. And that creates, you know, stable structures that are easy to identify. And so with 15 years of surveillance conducted by the US and the Zionists and the French and the English over Lebanon between the year 2006 and 2023, the enemy of Hezbollah had drawn up basically from all the mega data that they had looted from communications in the country, had drawn a whole, you know, branches of everything. Every leader, his children, his wife's siblings there, his father-in-law, his mother-in-law, everything was drawn up. Every home, every hideout, every so on. So, you know, it was by that point too late to hide anybody, right? So the vast majority of the assassinations of Hezbollah leadership, military and political, are attributed to this mega data, you know, loot and drawing up through AI all the movement of everybody. Now, what does this mean for today? We are seeing every day Hezbollah members being killed, even since the ceasefire. And every time we see one of them being killed, they're on a scooter or in a car, their personal car, personal scooter, going into their village, going visiting their family, whatever it is. And now it's clear that Hezbollah has basically retired anybody and everybody that was already exposed in a position of power in the military structures, because they are basically a burnt card. You can't hide them anywhere. And if you try hiding them, eventually their wife is going to visit her sister or her mother, and then they can trace it back through the mass surveillance and intelligence. So everybody that was in a position of leadership in the military structures has been retired, and they're out back into their day-to-day normal business life, knowing that they are going to be martyrs, most probably. And Hezbollah has restructured back away from being a semi-army to a resistance militia again. So now we have secret organizing. Now we have cell formations back again, as if it is the beginnings of Hezbollah or a resistance group, not a organized military. And thus, the Israelis don't know nothing about what's happening inside Hezbollah. Now, they don't know who's in what position, militarily speaking. And the other thing that Sayyid Naim al-Qasim referred to is that Hezbollah is rearming as fast as possible, and is actually ready currently for the what they predict to be the coming war, that will include the Wahhabi death squads on one side and the Zionist killing machine on the other. and they will, all the weapons that they are right now purchasing are designed for such a fight. It's not going to be, hypersonic missiles. It's going to be things about how to defend a nation from an invasion from the outside. And as we know, historically, Hezbollah has been, very successful in such wars. So this is what's coming, and I think everybody should prepare for it.
Laith, what's your take on the Netanyahu's visit to the United States? What does he want from Donald Trump and the administration in the United States? Is that related to the situation in Gaza? How much of it is about the situation between Israel and Iran?
Yeah, it's all one fight. So definitely Trump and Netanyahu would have discussed it all. Trump tried as much as he can to give everything that Israel wants, and he put at risk all the American military positions in the region of West Asia. He put at risk all the oil and gas fields that American companies own in West Asia. And he took the war as far as possible below the nuclear threshold, as we saw with Iran. But that's as far as he can go. The United States cannot start a nuclear war and not expect to see a third world war start with other nuclear powered countries moving into that war. So I don't know what Trump can offer Netanyahu more than this. Even that talk about the United States selling B-2 bombers to Israel, that's all just a crazy talk. Because number one, the Israelis basically own all of the militaries of the West. They can call it to order anytime they want to. They don't need to buy it. They don't need to spend money on it. And in fact, the Israelis never spend money on weapons they buy. It's basically give out handouts by the all Western coalitions. The Americans, give them the weapons for free. They never paid for anything. So this idea that the United States will sell a B-2 to Israel is the word "sell" is in itself a lie. Israel will never pay anything for anything. Number two, remember, the United States had to withdraw all of its bombers and air force from the region before it bombed Iran with those B-2. And there was B-2 and B-52 bombers inside the base in Diego Garcia, which is much closer to Iran than the United States. But the US withdrew those out of Diego Garcia, fearing that Iran's hypersonic ballistic missiles will reach it, which they would. And the United States had to fly the B-2 bombers all the way from its own territory on the other side of the planet to bomb Iran and then take them back all the way there so Iran wouldn't be able to destroy them once they land somewhere. So Israel is not a safe place for a B-2 to be parked. It's like you can see it on the worst camera on a satellite. You can see it. It's so big. So it's not logical for it to be stationed in Israel from that point of view. And therefore, this idea that the U.S. will sell it, it's not going to happen. But of course, Israel has access to it anytime it wants to. Now, what can Trump or the U.S. do more than they've done now? Most probably they can start more Wahhabi death squads. Most probably they can cause harm in Iraq. If we hear the same talk that we are hearing, and I already am seeing it, that we heard last week about Lebanon being taken over by HTS, we're hearing right now the same talk about Iraq, north and east being taken over by HTS. Okay, And remember this flag of HTS, the new flag of Syria, with the green and the red stars, the green on top and the red stars, 3 red stars. This is the flag that was put in by the French and British occupation. And these 3 stars are the 3 components of the Hashemite kingdom. Okay, there's Jordan, or Transjordan at the time, that included Palestine, and Iraq and Syria. Those 2 countries, Transjordan and Iraq, are star number 1 and star number 2. Okay, and therefore we already know it looks like this is what the Americans and the French want. They want, and this is another indicator of why Al-Julani and HTS are not going to last long. It's very probable that the West has noticed over the last 100 years, the most loyal servants to them in the Arabic world are not dictators that are part of republics. They are the royal families that are installed. They are the most stable and continuous and resilient to revolutions. So it's very probable that the US and Israel want to bring back Iraq and Syria under the rule of the Hashemites in Jordan. Of course, I'm not sure they're going to be successful in it, but that's their crazy ideas that they have put forward.
Late Donald Trump was asked about during the meeting with Netanyahu. He was asked about the 2-state solution, and here is the way that he tried to answer it, and he simply didn't answer it. He shifted it to Netanyahu. Here is what they said.
That there can be a 2-state solution that creates an independent.
I don't know. I'd ask Bibi that question. You have the greatest man in the world to answer that age-old question, 2-state. Go ahead. You give him your honest answer.
I think Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten us. And that means that certain powers, like overall security, will always remain in our hands. Now, that is a fact. And no one in Israel will agree to anything else, because we don't commit suicide. We want life, we cherish life for ourselves, for our neighbors. And I think we can work out a peace between us and the entire Middle East with President Trump's leadership. And by working together, I think we can establish a very, very broad peace that will include all our neighbors.
He simply ignores the answer and somehow doesn't care about 2-state solution. He wants something big, Abraham Accord. And you're taking that.
Well, this is the second time we hear Trump tell his own populace that there's a greater nation or a greater leader. I mean, we heard them say before, Israel is the greatest nation on earth. And now he's saying this is the greatest man in the world. I mean, if this doesn't show you who rules who, really, and if this doesn't trigger the pride of any America First person or any white supremacist, I don't know what. It's unbelievable. I think we've never seen this in human history before, that a state, its leaders debase themselves. A nation debases itself and says, we are less than somebody else. Never in human history has this happened. And that shows you how much control the Zionists have in Western societies and in their elite control systems. Now, about the Abraham Accord, I think this is something that everybody should understand. You know, the Zionification of Christianity and its diversion from any of the basics of tenets in Christianity started with the King George Bible. When the king revolted against the Catholic Church, and created the Anglican Church and merged the Torah with the Bible in a book and forced the population by the sword to follow this religion. And now we're, 300 almost years later, and we have the, what do you call them, the evangelicals in the United States, taking that path to the extreme, where they tell their own Christian followers that there's a chosen people, and it's not them, it's the Jews, and that Christians have to basically serve the Jews. Now, the Abrahamic Accord is a follow-up on that. They want to basically create the new Quran that will include the Bible and the Torah. And we can see the beginnings of that with the Emirates building that, 3 houses of worship, a mosque, a church, and a temple, synagogue in a triangle together in a land. And so the Abrahamic Accords are supposed to be the Abrahamic religion that's supposed to be enforced on the Arabs, on the Muslims, where the Muslims will also follow what these evangelicals are doing and say to their own population, there's a chosen people and they are the Jews, not you. And you have to accept their Torah as the word of God, not the Quran. And most probably they will take out sections of the Quran, as they did with the King George Bible. They took out sections of the Bible. So this is what this is about. The aim is not a peace treaty between the neighbors of the Zionist colony with it. No, the Abraham Accords are supposed to culminate with the Muslims bowing down in front of the Jews and openly saying that the Jews are the chosen people and that we will serve them. Okay? This is the ultimate goal of this, to create this new Abrahamic religion, and this is not going to happen. It's not doable. It's impossible to do without mass genocide. Okay? Up until now, after 100 years of the Wahhabi cult and the Muslim Brotherhood cult created by the West, trying to convert the Muslims into that, these cults, hasn't worked. Even with the billions of dollars of money spent by the Gulf countries and the Zionists to create permanency to this cult, it cannot control. There's too much history, and you practically need to destroy and wipe out all history. And this is part of the project. Why the Wahhabi death squads go and destroy every archaeological site and burn every library and everything, just all to try to erase history. But it's impossible. We're too late for that. There's internet. There is archival record of everything that you can destroy and burn. Maybe if they did it 100 years ago, they could have achieved their goal, maybe. But it's not happening right now. The time is too late for that. And whatever the Americans now are going to do to try to force the Abraham Accord, the Abraham religion, is going to backfire. Even more so because of the collapse of the Syrian government. For decades, they told us Syria is the obstacle to the liberation of Palestine, that these HTS are going to liberate Damascus and then walk into Jerusalem. And it's Assad and the Ba'ath government that are protectors of the Zionists. And that the axis of resistance is collaborating with the Zionists against the liberation of the Arabic people. Where right now, you have a whole axis of Wahhabis from Turkey all the way to the Emirates with geographic continuity, and nobody's facing Israel. In fact, we're hearing the opposite, that Al-Julani is going to sell out Al-Julan. He's going to sell out the Golan Heights. is even Shab'a farms, which are Lebanese according to treaties between Syria and Lebanon from 1942 and 49. Now we're hearing that the Syrians are going to say, no, this is actually Syrian, and we're going to give it to Israel. So the Lebanese wouldn't have a right to these territories. So things are now in the open, and the longer the Wahhabi death squads are on the borders of Palestine and doing nothing, the more exposed they are, and the weaker their propaganda is, and we're seeing that unfold in front of our eyes.
Laith, with the situation in Gaza, many people don't know what's going on in Gaza. We are, as you know, we're all over the world. We are witnessing what's going on by videos, photos, all of that. But when it comes to the starvation, the way that the civilians are getting murdered by Israelis, this genocide, is that somehow, do you think that for the case of starvation, they're trying to do something? I don't know, whatever force is going to, is it going a humanitarian, I don't know, entities to go there and help them? Is there anything going on in terms of starvation in Gaza?
No, I mean, people are being deliberately starved. We know now that the Israelis are creating a mass concentration camp in the south of the Gaza Strip that is almost finished building, and that they will be ordering all the surviving Palestinians into this concentration camp. And once they're inside this concentration camp, they will be starved further and will be given a choice of leaving or dying right there. And they will not be allowed to leave the extermination camp except to exit Gaza and never return. So this is where the direction, the end. Remember, in that press conference with Netanyahu, Trump also was asked about the expulsion of Palestinians in Gaza and having other states take them. And he again referred to his master, Netanyahu, to answer that question. And Netanyahu said, oh, we've got dozens of countries waiting for and want to. Of course, there's not one country that wants to do that, not because they're not, the vast majority of Arabic states are house slaves of the Zionists, but it's just because it's going to destabilize their country, and Palestinians will resist from their country also, as has happened for the last 80 years. Anywhere there's Palestinians, there's Palestinian resistance. And so I don't think it's very clear that the end that the Zionists want to have is mass extermination of the Palestinians. The United Nations told us this morning that the rate of death of Palestinian children is 10 times what it was just a year ago. So there's accelerated numbers of deaths of infants, unseen before in any war zone. And the hospitals keep on being attacked. The aid distribution points keep on being attacked. The little aid that's making it there, and journalists keep on being killed. Over the last week, we've had at least 3 new journalists that were assassinated with their families. But throughout all of this, there is valiant resistance by the Palestinians. And, we saw that huge operation yesterday morning where an Israeli troop formation was gathered in the neutral zone outside Gaza, outside Beit Hanun, which is right on the corner, northern eastern corner of the Gaza Strip. And somehow the Palestinian resistance had planted a whole minefield inside what is 1948 territories. So they've crossed into what is now Israel. This is 22 months after the beginning of the Aqsa flood. And they planted all these landmines. They waited for an Israeli tank to drive near one of them or on top of the one before they blew it up. Then a APC arrived to help these Israeli soldiers, and it was blown up. Then a jeep arrived, and it was blown up. Then a whole contingent of Israeli forces attempted to enter the field, and they blew up the whole field in them. So the lowest estimate is like at least 30 soldiers dead in that one operation. The Israelis keep on raising the number. First it was 2, then it was 6, then it was 12 dead, and it keeps on going up because they're scared of telling the number directly. But we have visual confirmation of hundreds of soldiers inside the minefield when it was blown up. So it's clear the numbers are high. This is one of many operations that we saw over the last week that are very deadly. And this shows us multiple things here, proves to us. One is that the Israeli ground forces are exhausted, okay? All their experienced soldiers that have previous experiences are either dead or maimed. The age keeps on going down of who are even officers. And as the Israeli media just told us 2 days ago, and also Sky News and BBC, that Israeli soldiers are having mental breakdowns. There's at least now 12 Israeli soldiers that set themselves on fire over the last few weeks. And on the other is that the Israeli military has spread itself thin inside Gaza. The supply routes are long. They're been on the ground for so long that all their movement has been studied by the resistance. And now the resistance can create ambushes much easier than before. Add to it the effects of Iran's attacks on the intelligence infrastructure of Israel, whether it's the bases that have the listening posts and or the intelligence headquarters like Mossad and so forth and so on that were destroyed by Iran. All of that has direct impact on Israeli ability to manage the battlefield inside Gaza. And finally, looking at all of these realities, we can tell that the Israelis cannot win this war. They're losing it worse than they were before. And again, they have to fall back on mass genocide as a way to consider themselves winners.
I don't know if you saw, you had because the interview that I want to talk about, it was by BBC and Ehud Olmert, the former Israeli prime minister. He was talking about the situation in the aftermath of the attacks between the conflict between Iran and Israel, direct conflict, direct war. And he was somehow late. Recently, I saw 2 interviews of him, and one of them he was condemning the government in Lebanon, in Israel, and he said that they're committing war and the war crimes they're committing somehow. I've never seen any other official in Israel going that big on the going that big on the policies of Israel. But in this interview about the war between Iran and Israel, he somehow tried to exaggerate the achievements on the part of Israel. And it was so strange to me. And what is his agenda? What is he trying to say, in your opinion, by saying that Israel has totally defeated Iran and they destroyed everything? And a little thing happened in Israel, and we've been suffering, but not that much as Iran is suffering. What is the agenda when you see these people who are criticizing the system in Israel somehow, but at the same time trying to defend one of the worst decision, in my opinion, on the part of the Israeli government?
You know, there's always an interest by the Zionists to keep you listening to them. And part of that game is to have some critical Zionist voices put forward. Just to play that game, like, Israel is a freedom of speech and freedom of thought, and we have multiple positions, and Netanyahu is not Israel, and the government of Israel is not Israel. So this is the ploy, and unfortunately, most people keep on falling for it and somehow listen to Barak, or it was Barak, right? You said.
Ehud Olmert.
Oh, sorry, Olmert. It was Olmert. Yes. So this is the ploy, and once you listen to him saying something which is truthful, and now he caught you, now the next interview he hits you with a lie. Okay. And so that's the strategy. And unfortunately, it seems like to be the strategy in general when we're talking about Jewish opposition to Zionism. I feel because there's nobody taking action against Zionism within the Jewish community, even hearing our friends like Aaron Mate or Sachs or Blumenthal feels like only keeping the populace of the world, in confusion, right? If there's nobody taking action that is Israeli and or who's Jewish against Zionism, against the genocide, against all these wars in the name of Judaism, and then all of us, if there's no talk, also would have turned against Jews and Judaism and blamed Judaism for these crimes. But having a few Jewish voices once in a while come up and say the total opposite of what Zionists are saying keeps everybody in this confusion and brings us back to, like, okay, let's separate between Judaism and Zionism. So this is now very dangerous for the people, anyone that wants to end the genocide in Gaza, to keep that confusion between the populace. And even if we disagree, which I know we disagree, Nima, on this, which is fine to me. I have no problem with disagreements on things. Even if we disagree, we can at least agree that the Zionists that make those criticisms of of Netanyahu and his government are also themselves Zionists, and they will also defend having a Jewish state in the land of Palestine and apartheid, where there's a supremacy for Jews over the Christians and Muslims and others in the land. So that's, I think, and it's the same thing when we talk about the media, like Haaretz newspaper. Haaretz newspaper publishes every once in a while a very critical article about Israel, even outing them doing genocide or raping prisoners or whatever it is. But then you look at the 99% of the rest of the output, it's all Zionist and justifying the crimes of Zionism. So this is the role the critic in the Zionist colony plays, which is to keep everybody still listening to Jewish or Zionist voices.
Laith, before wrapping up, I don't know if you saw the interview that Piers Morgan had with Dershowitz, and he somehow, it was unbelievable to see the way that he was describing the situation in Gaza. He simply said that if you want to destroy Hamas, you have to kill all these civilians, children, all together in order to achieve that. How is that going to even, how can they allow someone like Dershowitz talking this way? Is that is the society somehow, because of the outcome of what is happening in Gaza, is somehow changing? They're so, how I cannot imagine why someone like Dershowitz can say, and can s- can bring these sort of ideas to the mainstream media talking about it. It's unbelievable. Look at what has happened to Gaza. Look at the destruction. Look at the genocide. And you coming on the mainstream media and preaching and advocating for more destruction and more killing, more murder.
Yeah, I mean, that shows you, on the one hand, the desperation of the Zionist propaganda machine, because they were much more sophisticated in their propaganda prior to their literal defeat on October 7th by a few thousand Palestinian fighters. They have abandoned right now all the propaganda that was coached in liberal or rights camouflage. They're now openly talking about Israel as keeping the Muslim and Arab hordes at bay on behalf of all the West. That was never said publicly before, but it was the reality. They are openly saying, a Palestinian child will kill me when they grow up because I killed his parents, and therefore I gotta kill him now. So it's now speaking only to the most hardcore supremacists in the West and in the Zionist population, and trying to trigger those emotions, okay, as they're purposefully doing it because they cannot anymore speak to the majority of the population. The majority of the population all around the planet Earth, including in Western societies, have ceased to be unconcerned or unaffiliated or haven't taken a position. You look a few years ago, 3 years ago, you look at these populations and their surveys in the West, the vast majority will say, I don't know about this issue. It's not. But yes, there was more people out of those who knew about the issue that were pro-Zionist than pro-Palestinian. Today, there's nobody that can tell you, I don't know enough about the issue. Everybody knows enough, and the vast majority of them are pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist. So the Zionists cannot anymore address the undecided. There is no undecided. So they have to now direct their propaganda only to their camp, to strengthen the resolve of that camp in front of the majority. And they're telling their own camp, hey, don't be scared of the majority. We own the news, we own the banks, we own the war machines, and we own even the judiciary, as has happened, as we saw with Palestine Action. And we can discuss a little bit that if you want. But this is why the propaganda of the Zionists is much more crude now, because it is directed to the base emotions of their already supportive camp and nobody else. That's what they care about. So there's quickly two things that we can talk about. I think one is Yemen, and the other is this Palestine Action Court. But I'm not gonna talk too much if we do.
But I think before wrapping up, it's important to talk about Yemen because they attacked Yemen and Yemen responded. Do you feel that as time goes by, the axis of resistance when it comes to Hezbollah, to Iran, to Yemen, I would argue Iraq, these people are so connected. And on the other hand, Laith, in my opinion, they're trying to do something to attach something to what is happening in Syria. They're trying to gather people in Syria. They're trying to connect it with the Central Asia, to those people who are much closer to the Wahhabi faction that they have created. It seems that the future somehow the future is a conflict bigger than what we've seen so far, a conflict that the heart of the Wahhabi faction would be in Syria, gathering people in Syria from outside and going against resistance. Do you feel that would happen, or somehow they're trying to manipulate the way that they're trying to manipulate the situation?
Yeah. So about Yemen, first off, it's amazing right now. Yemen relaunched its blockade on the Zionist colony, and this time it's not going to be only attacking ships that are going to the Zionist colony. They're going to be attacking any ship affiliated with any company that goes to Israeli docks, Israeli ports. So those two ships that were sunk last night and yesterday, well, amazing video, by the way, that everybody should watch, they were not going to the Zionist colony, but the companies that own them have other ships that are going. So this is now a much higher standard. This means now that any shipping company that goes to Israel, even if they decide they're not going to go through the Red Sea, their insurance costs are going to skyrocket, because Yemen can hit something in the Indian Ocean if they want to. They can hit something in the Gulf of Oman, in the Arabian Sea, and even in the Mediterranean if they wish to. And I think we're going to get to that point. So this is a serious blockade, and every shipping company that is going to continue shipping to the Zionist colony, it means that they don't care about their own customers, they don't care about their own profit, and that they are also themselves slaves of the Zionist colony that are willing to destroy their own company just to get goods to go to this colony. About the hoarding of Wahhabis, I almost said Zionists, which is the same, Wahhabis in Syria, that is happening already. Yes, you're right. There's, now all the families, extended families of the Uyghurs and the Turkmen and Uzbek and so forth that are in Syria are being imported. And we're not only talking about father, mother, so on. Now we're talking about brothers-in-laws and mothers-in-laws and everybody's cousin and second cousin. And they are depopulating whole villages in specifically the Hama region and close to the borders with Turkey, also in Idlib, with these extended families of these Wahhabi death squads from Central Asia, Turkic speaking peoples. And this is happening simultaneously with all the removal and expulsion of Syrians from their homes. And so we're seeing a huge demographic change. And, those wars on Syria and Iraq and that 15 years war had minced the, army that the US put together for 30 years of Wahhabi death squads. Now they're re-recruiting, and they have a safe haven and so on. And as we saw with the talk about takeover of Lebanon and the new maps that are coming out of Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, parts made into this new country, it's clear that this is going to be the next stage, either an attack on Iran or an attack on Iraq, or a combined attack on both. And the axis of resistance is preparing themselves for that. We saw the popular mobilization units in Iraq yesterday and the day before move big convoys to the border with Syria. And that's because they can see the movement of the Wahhabi death squads closer to Al-Tanaf American occupation base in the triangle between Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. And they're preparing themselves to defend. I am sure Hezbollah here is preparing their defense lines in the north and in the Qalamun Mountains. There's a big chance of a combined attack from the Israelis crossing into the Beqa Valley through the highway between Damascus and Lebanon, Beirut. And you know, the last time the Israelis tried to do that, there was a Syrian army in 1982 that conducted the largest tank battle since World War I and defeated the invading Israelis, and also had the hugest air dogfight with 70 somewhat Syrian jets being down, but they defeated the Israelis. There is no Syrian army now to do that. In fact, the Syrian army that is there now will be joining the Israelis. So there's a few weak points in the defense of Lebanon, and that mainly is the Qalamun Mountains and the borders on the east with Syria, which could see a combined invasion of Israelis and Wahhabis. The north is a different story. Lebanon may lose Tarablos, Tripoli, because it's a Sunni city, and there's a lot of ISIS flags inside Tarablos right now, flying from 10 years ago. There is no Hezbollah fighters there. And yesterday, Israel bombed Tripoli for the first time. And they targeted one of the leaders of the Jama'ah Islamiyah, the Muslim group or Islamic group, which is a Sunni anti-Zionist resistance group that is not Wahhabi and is not Palestinian. It's actually Lebanese, and they were involved in the fight to defend Lebanon on the side of Hezbollah. So it seems like Israel is trying to kill any opposition within the Sunni population to a Wahhabi takeover of the country. Those are all kind of like the main headlines that we can put into that category that you're asking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laith, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always, brother.
Talk to you soon next week, Habibi Nima.
See you soon. Bye-bye.